Hello, ladies and gents, and welcome back to another episode of 3, 2, 1, Go! And this episode, we are reviewing the free flash game that you can play on Kongregate called Town of Fears, made by Avi Muha Games, so go check them out. This game caught my eye around Halloween, and I started playing it because I was bored. And I looked into it, and I was like, okay, I'm not really sure about what this game wants to be, but I'll go along with it. And it turns out I didn't fall in love with it or anything, but it definitely caught my attention as a game worthy of being reviewed. And for a flash game, I mean, you can obviously tell it is a flash game, but just the way it's played, it feels unique to me. But we'll go a little bit more into that later. Overview of the game. It's kind of hard to describe this game. It's kind of a reaction clicker type game. It's an RPG, but it's very linear storyline. There's no freedom to do what you want. But the way you attack is you have a little scrolling bar on the bottom when you're attacking a foe, and you try and click your mouse right exactly when the cursor scrolling over is on a specific point. And the damage you do is based on the percentage of correctness. So obviously getting very, very close to the mark will do much more damage than if you completely miss it. If you miss too much, then you don't do any damage at all. And you get crits for if you get 100% dead on, if you get within 90% range. You have a chance to smash through the opponent's defense and so forth. That's kind of the overall game mechanic that it goes through. It goes along and follows this kind of scary cult plot. Like, it's obvious it tries to be a scary game. The plot's based around a cult. I don't really want to explain too much more. There's monsters roaming around the city, and basically you play as a detective at first, and then later get some buddies, and you're trying to investigate what's going on in this town. The characters, there's 5 different characters you can play at any given time, however, or not at any given time, rather, but you meet them as the game progresses, and then at different points in the storyline, you're given the option of usually playing between 1 to 3 characters. The final boss, you get all 5 of your characters to play with. The character system, like how it works, is after a battle, you take damage, you kill the opponent, or else you fail. After that, everybody in your team gets healed 20 points. And you start with about 100 for some characters. It can go as low as 70 at the start, but you can obviously put points into upgrading that if you desire. But so yeah, everybody gets healed 20 points. So basically, the strategy is, how do you want to balance your characters going into battle, so you can have some characters heal up a little bit while other players take damage for a bit. It's a lot about juggling your characters efficiently. But yeah, that's about it for an overall view of the game. If you're watching the video in the background, which you should be, you can see how the system works. Everybody has. Right now I'm only playing as the detective, which is the character you start with, and he has some special skills and stuff like that, which I'm using right off the bat. Usually I just go ahead, use my double shot or maybe my headshot, and then there's a regular attack, and then the very last ability that everybody shares is the defense, which not only gives you a very high chance of avoiding the next oncoming attack, but it also increases your constitution, which for spellcasters is invaluable as it increases your spell efficiency. Now, the pros of this game. What caught my eye? The very first thing I want to point out is the sound and music is, I don't want to say it's incredible, but the music at the start definitely caught my ear, I guess. It was very engaging, and unfortunately that music doesn't really carry over to the game because there isn't any music in the game. Most of the game, like the sound and music in the game, it's all sound. It's mostly like there might be some bottles rattling, or if you're in the train compartments with the cultist as I am now before I get defeated. Um, it might be like rattling of levers or maybe some the sound of fire or something like that, but overall the sound effects are really solid and it really does add just that little bit of an edge to the game. The other thing I really liked about this game that I have a problem with a lot of other RPGs sometimes. Like, sometimes it fits the game, sometimes it doesn't, but usually I get kind of upset when they don't let you respec your character or characters. So you'll put points into attributes or skills or perks or whatever it might be called, and then you can't do anything. If you want to change something, you have to start the whole game over. But this game, I really liked the fact that you can respec at any time, or before a battle rather, and you can put points into your health, your constitution, your speed. I can't remember all the different skills off the top of my head, but then you've got your 4 optional skills. I think 2 are usually passive and 2 are active abilities. And I really like that, if something's working for you at the beginning of the game, and then you want to respec later, you can do that. So if, like what I did, was I put all my points into health the first time I went through this game, and then I figured, you know what, I don't really need health so much, I want increased dodge chance. And you can do that. You can do that at any time in the game, there's no penalty. It really just gives you more of a creative feel. It's not like, oh, here's like the main thing you can do and that's right. There's different ways you can go about doing the game. Some may be harder than others, but at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want with your attributes. The last, like, really positive pro thing that I found in this game was it has this not immersive feel. It's got this feel that makes every time you win a battle, you just feel a little bit of reward. And by the time you get to the end of the game, you feel super satisfied that you did it. I never got bored once in this game. The atmosphere is just great. For all the other flaws it may have, the atmosphere really gives the game a much more positive edge. And it may be the sum of its parts, but Muha Games they did an excellent job with adding that little oomph to the game that really makes it enjoyable to play. And I can say with certainty that this game would be fun to play a second or maybe even a third time through. It takes about 2 hours maybe to beat the whole game, and it is free, so I do recommend you try this out so you can get what I'm talking about. Now, the cons. There were a few things that were thorns in my side in this game. And some thorns that I didn't really realize until I looked in the comments of the game, and I was like, yeah, I kind of noticed that, but I couldn't really put it into words. I think the one thing I noticed right off the bat is I was playing this game and I was like, you know what, let's go on the hardest difficulty, let's go hard. Like, I don't even care because I might not even be playing this game for much longer. I've got to record some videos later. But I started playing in hard and I went through and I went through and I never died. And I came to I went through the whole game because eventually I got really into it, and I realized, I'm probably not going to die. There was only one part where I had to actually respec my character specifically for one battle, and it didn't do anything for me that the game was that easy that I didn't have to worry about maybe respecing for different enemies. And on top of that all, not knowing what enemy is going to come up really doesn't help that either. So if I come across a zombie, I can't know that ahead of time and say, oh, well, healing powers are going to be much better against a zombie than they would be perchance for perhaps another creature who does hard hitting, and then I might want increased dodge chance or more health maybe. So yeah, overall difficulty way too easy in my opinion. If I'm playing on hard mode for the first time, I shouldn't be able to breeze through 95% of the game without any difficulty. The final boss was kind of a joke to me. It wasn't a joke because 3 of my 5 characters got knocked unconscious, quote unquote. That is to say, they die, but then they come back the next battle you go to. But yeah, difficulty they could afford to ramp that up. So the flexibility of the attribute system, you really have to use that to your advantage. Second thing that came out to me, this was something I discovered late game, was the characters are fairly unbalanced, not only in mostly to each other. I'd say one of them's a little overpowered against creatures in general, but you can tell once you've played with all 5 of the characters, some are much better than others. All of them do have like a specific role they're supposed to do. So you'll have like the detective you start with, for example. He's supposed to be kind of a hard hitter, but he's not really supposed to survive for too long unless you want to make him a tank. You can make him a tank, but it's not really optimal that you do that. He's supposed to be the guy dishing out a lot of damage fairly quickly. But he can take a few hits as well. And then you'll have, like I'm playing with now, the librarian. He's obviously a healer, and he has a lot of magic spells, or not a lot, but he's got his magic spell. But obviously then he can't take very many hits as he has the healing spell. But you can tell there was one character in particular, which if you play the game you'll probably be able to point out pretty quickly. She's pretty useless overall. Like, even if you get the best attributes for her, she's basically death fodder. She's someone to put in, have her die, and then finish off the monster with someone else so they don't take too much damage. And that, in my opinion, that's kind of a crying shame. 2 characters, in my opinion, were slightly overpowered. One of their skills was definitely overpowered because it did a ridiculous amount of damage and heals you for a portion of that. And once you've got that thing fully upgraded, there's no stopping you with that character. None at all. One of the characters also had a fairly powerful ability that I thought recharged too quickly. You could use it once every other turn, so basically you could alternate between dealing ridiculous damage and then healing yourself. So this guy was a pretty good tank. A little too good in my opinion, but I don't really want to spoil it too much more than that. If you play it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Need to tighten up the balancing on the characters a little bit, in my opinion. Balancing for the monsters, though, coming out of the cons for a little bit, the balancing on the monsters was pretty good overall. Again, difficulty could go up, though. I liked how each of the monsters did have their own special skills. As you can, it's in the upper left-hand corner of the playing screen, and you can see I don't usually hover over them for too long, but they all have their own strengths and weaknesses, which I liked. But yeah, balancing with the characters needs to be dealt with in order to make this an absolutely stellar Flash game. Next con, this one really strikes a chord with me. And this is something I have a hard time dealing with in games. Somehow this game made up for it, though, in its uniqueness and originality in some areas and just that overall feeling. But story in this game is really not up to par with other Flash games that I've played and other free games. The stories, I mean, it's generic at best. Without giving too much away, you're trying to figure out why there's monsters in the town, and then once you figure that out, you have to deal with the problem. I don't want to spoil too much of this. I mean, it's not a great story, but if you go ahead and play it, it probably takes less than 2 hours on like an easy or normal difficulty. You can easily see that the game, it feels like someone took a formula for just about every horror game and put it in the game, and then it's like done. I'm not going to tweak it any. There's really no uniqueness in the plot at all. I mean, you could argue some of the monsters are like, oh, well, that's not in really any other horror game, and you're like, well, yeah, but I mean, the overall plot line of the game is essentially the same. Monsters are bad, go find out what's causing them and get rid of it. Well, okay. Um, I think it felt in time like in certain places like the only reason why the plot was going in the way it was to make sure you got to play with all the characters equally. 'Cause you can see there's ridiculous things that go on in the plot sometimes, and you're like, why are they pairing up those two? Like, it doesn't make any sense other than, well, I haven't played with these two characters that much, so we might as well put them together. And it really doesn't add anything to the game that they have to do that. Um, yeah, story overall pretty bad. I wouldn't say it's pathetic, because it's still it's generic. That's the best way I can put it. Not great. Nothing special to it. It's based in the real world, assumedly, but yeah, not a great story overall. Last thing I want to quickly touch on is the bugs in this game. There are a few bugs that they're mostly temptation bugs, I like to call them. Stuff that's not, like, if you're playing through the game normally, you're not going to find as an issue. Like, if you sit down and play this game, like, start to finish, which is very easy to do if you have an hour to 2 hours, that's very doable. But if you like frequently will save your game, log off, shut down your computer, and then come back on another day, you're going to find a few bugs that this game has with the saving. And I only realized this because of the comments, because I actually did this all in one playthrough on Halloween night. And I think the biggest one overall is the health bug, and that's if you load up the game after saving and quitting, all your characters get healed 20 health points like they would if you had just finished a battle. So what you can do is heal up to full on all your characters after every battle. That's possible. Like, it might be a little tedious, but if you're having a problem with a battle, that is something you can do. Like I said before, it's a temptation bug more than anything. Like, there's nothing that's saying you have to do that if you're going through in one playthrough, but it's more of a bug for the people who are saving and quitting than anything. Yeah, you're going to get perks and advantages from doing that versus just doing it in a straight playthrough, unfortunately. I did find a few other bugs with the scroller. Sometimes the scroller, it might be my computer, but I have a fairly decent gaming computer, so I can't imagine it would be the computer's fault. But the scrolling bar, sometimes it's not like it stutters, but it speeds up very slightly and then slows back down to its original speed. And if you're using an ability like the librarian's multi-hit skill, I can't remember what it is. It's basic. It does damage with little hits, so it's very good at getting around someone who can block a lot. But yeah, those little hits, it's really hard to hit them all with that bug because it slightly speeds up and then slows down. Like, you have to really watch it, but once you play the game, you can start to tell that the scroller bar is doing this, and maybe it's not a bug, but to me it definitely seems like one, so I kind of wish they would fix that. But enough about complaints, because overall this game was, I wouldn't say exceptional, but for a Flash game, I was very impressed with it. The scrolling bar game combined with the horror aspect of the game, I guess. It's not a scary game by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought it was original. It was something I had never really seen before in the free market. Amnesia, of course, like in other pay-to-play games that rely on the horror aspect, they're all first-person, and the point of the game is to get scared with a pop-up scare. And this game, it kind of nicely combines a unique game mechanic with a kind of creepy atmosphere, and overall the game feels very rewarding. Not going to give it any stars, of course, but I highly recommend you check this out. You can play it on Congregate. You might be able to find it on other Flash websites, but I don't know because I can't spend all of my time trying to find out every single website this game is on. But without further ado, guys, thank you for watching the second episode of Free 2 1 Go. As always, leave a comment on your own opinions on the game. You can leave game suggestions. No guarantees at all that I'll ever get to it. I actually have a list of games I'd like to review in the future in front of me, but we'll get to that at some point. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.